Alright, yeah, welcome back on in to some more Magic Arena, and this week we're going to be doing something a little bit more special on the channel. I want to try something that I'm going to call a budget week. So, in addition to the usual content that I'm going to make, I'm going to try and get to you guys a brand new budget deck every day for the rest of this week. So, I've asked you guys in the past about budget and what you would consider a budget, and we came to the conclusion that the max top tier, before it stops becoming budget, is 6 rares and 4 mythics. So I've been building decks that have followed that restriction. Some go quite a fair bit below it, some hit that limit just to make sure that the decks have some actual competitive edge, because I feel like using that budget is definitely something that we need to do. So I'm going to be trying out something like that this week, though, or today, in fact. We're going to be playing Mono Blue Windy Boys. Now, Windy Boys is a Mono Blue Favourable Winds deck. So, in this particular deck, it's all about blue flyers. So, 1 and a blue for an enchantment, creatures you control with flying get +1/+1. So you see the theme. We want to be playing good value blue, well, it doesn't really matter that they're blue, good value flying creatures. So we've got things like Siren Storm Tailor, which is a 1/1 for 1 with flying, so automatically it's got that Lord effect going for it. And we can pay 2 to sacrifice it to counter a target spell or ability that targets you or a creature you control. So it can counter things like Settle the Wreckage, it can counter removal spells for your flyers. Say your opponent's trying to get rid of your Tempest Djinn, which is the top of our curve. It's a 3 mana, 3 blue, 0/4 with flying that gets +1/+0 for each basic island you control. Which means that the mana base is very budget as well. We're running simply 23 islands. I should mention that with the restrictions on budget, you rules Nazis out there might call me a cheater, because I've actually not quite done 6 rares and 4 mythics in this particular list. You may notice that there are no mythics whatsoever. So I've accompanied that slightly cheating with 7 rares instead. We've got 4 copies of Tempest Djinn and 3 Dreamcall Siren. So I'm slightly breaking the rules, but I'm only breaking the rules because I'm not using a part of the budget in this particular instance. But I still think this is an absolutely solid grinding deck. This is one that I actually use in its current form to grind on my off time a lot of the time, because it's honestly just so fast, and a lot of the times as well the actual loop of the deck doesn't require a great deal of thought. So this could actually be a pretty good beginner deck as well, for anyone who's not quite adept in maybe the card pool of Arena, doesn't quite know everything about the game. It's really simple to play. You're not going to get mana screwed by colours or anything like that. You don't have to worry about any complicated lands. The actual attacking and blocking strategy is fairly bog standard. You know, you just want to be attacking in every turn as much as possible. The only things that you really want to be doing as far as interacting with your opponent is a few little tempo plays. So we've got 3 copies of Unsummon, which is 1 blue for an instant speed, return target creature to its owner's hand. So we use this to either get blockers out of the way of our flyers, or we use it to slow our opponent down by bouncing their really expensive creatures back to their hand. We don't really have to worry about too much else other than creatures, mostly because we are the beatdown plan. We want to be doing that a lot of the time. But if we do have something to worry about that is non-creature based, we do have Lookout's Dispersal. So this is 2 and a blue for an instant speed. This spell costs 1 less to cast for if you control a pirate. So it becomes a better mana leak for those who know Modern. It essentially becomes 1 and a blue, counter target spell unless its controller pays 4. Because we actually have a lot of pirates. Siren Storm Tamer is a pirate. We've got Kitesail Corsair, which is a pirate. Aerialist is a pirate. Tempest Djinn isn't, but Dreamcaller Siren is as well. So really, we've only got Tempest Djinns as far as non-pirate cards are concerned. And if we're playing Tempest Djinns, we've probably got the 3 mana to actually use Lookout's Dispersal. So even if we're not getting the benefit from that counter spell, we're still going to be able to cast it. So we don't really need hard counters in this deck, obviously, because we are the beatdown deck. We want to be winning around turn 5 or 6. So by turn 5 or 6, if we are finding that spells that our opponent can cast, he's going to be able to pay 4, we're probably losing anyway, because he's probably ramped up quite a fair bit. So, you know, the actual conditional counter on this one doesn't really matter. It's a hard counter 90% of the time. So if it's going into the late game, we might just already be losing. To make sure that we can actually survive somewhat in the late game, though, we do have 3 copies of Charter Course. So Charter Course is 1 and a blue for a sorcery speed. Draw 2 cards, then discard a card unless you attacked with a creature this turn. Now, attacking with a creature is not very difficult because we are mono flyers. It does mean that a lot of our opponent's creatures likely are not going to be able to block anything that we play. So Storm Tamer on 1, for example, allows us to immediately activate Charter Course on 2. Likely we want to be playing something like a Corsair or an Aerialist, though. We want to be getting our damage down on the board as soon as possible, because this deck really is about maximizing damage every single turn while also protecting your damage at the same time with dispersals and unsummons. So that's the basic gist of the deck. One last little bit of interaction that we do have with our opponent as well is Dreamcaller's Siren. So this is the most expensive creature, but it's also the most interactive and probably the most useful one as well. 2 and 2 blue for a 3/3 with flash, which means we can cast it on our opponent's turn, and flying, of course. It can only block creatures with flying, but that's not really an issue. We're not planning on blocking very often. We're just going to be beating down quite a lot of the time. When it enters the battlefield, if you control another pirate, we've already gone through this, nearly every single creature is a pirate, so as long as he's one of another creature on the board anyway, he gets to activate his ability. If you control another pirate, tap up to 2 target non-land permanents. So we can use this to tap down our opponent's creatures on combat steps. So maybe our opponent is keeping up with us as far as our beatdown plan is. You know, we'll be racing quite a lot of the time. So if our opponent's racing just as fast as us, we need a way to offset his damage in addition to unsummoning his creatures and things like that. So that's where Dreamcaller Siren comes in, tapping down 2 of his biggest creatures to reduce the damage while also adding damage to our board as well. It's a really simple deck. I do highly recommend you guys play it as well. We also do have Curious Obsession as well on the Charter Course plan. It gives +1/+1, and whenever a creature deals combat damage, you draw a card. So in the early game, this is card advantage, which is really, really solid. But yes, I do highly recommend checking out this deck. If you are a beginner player, this is a fantastic grinding deck. Unfortunately, the rares that do go into it don't go into very much else. But I think that's kind of the cost at having a really, really quick grinding deck. Any kind of blue quest that you've got for the day as well, this one's going to be really good because there's no colourless stuff. Everything you cast during your game is going to count towards your quests. Dealing damage is definitely the thing that you want to do, so that's another quest off the board. And just wins in general. This deck does actually really, really well. So I'm going to showcase a few games for you guys, but before we get into that, if you do like this kind of deck, I'd really appreciate it if you guys would leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more budget stuff, as well as other Magic Arena content and things like that. And consider sharing it with a friend or family member as well. If you want a good place to start in the game, then this one I would highly recommend starting as well. So it'd mean the absolute world to me if you guys could do that. So, without further ado, let's showcase some games with Mono Blue Windy Boys. See you in the games. Okay, we're in, and we don't have a turn 1 play, but we do have 3 lands, a Corsair, and favourable winds, so I think I'm going to keep this all the same. It's not the fastest hand in the world, and that might be bad for us, but we'll see. You really do want to be getting right out the gate with this one, so we're going to lead off with the Corsair. Doesn't have flying as long as it's not attacking, but attacking is what we have planned, so really not an issue. So he's matched our 2 power with his own 2 power, which is completely fair of our opponent. We're going to swing in though, and then we're going to add some more power to the board. Ours is a 2/3, so it can actually block his Adorned Pouncer if he doesn't have an answer for this. And this is his opportunity to answer it as well, because next turn we're going to be playing Island, favourable winds, and we get to hold up and Lookout's Dispersal. So he actually has a Gideon here. I'm assuming he's ticking up on the area list. Yeah. Okay, so that is something that we do have to be aware of. Our opponent forgetting that I can still block and wasting time there. Okay, so he's going to be ticking Gideon up to 5. I think we still want to go with the favourable winds plan though. We'll be able to swing in for 3 at Gideon. We do want to get this guy off the board because if he does 0 him, then it means that we still have to kill him regardless. Endless Sands. What's this one? Ixalan's Binding, eh? We are going to prevent that. I want to keep my damage on the board, and Gideon is going to die regardless of what he ticks up on here, so he might just end up 0ing to get in for damage. Yeah. This ends now. And that's completely fine with us, because we are not going to block. We only have to direct one of our creatures at our opponent here. So, doesn't really matter which one, they're both going to be 3 power. Let's get in. And now we do have either Tempest Djinn or we have Dreamcaller Siren on the Flash. And I think we want to go with Dreamcaller because he's getting close to the point now where he could actually wipe the board. So I'd like to be able to establish a board state in response to a board wipe if we can. So we might see a Fumigate here. Regal Caracal. Okay. So now he's got lifelink that we have to contend with. Which shouldn't be too bad, because we're going to be able to Dreamcaller here. And we can tap down the Pouncer and the Caracal. That means he's not getting any damage in this turn. Ooh, favourable winds. That's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 damage. It's so close. So I'm wondering whether or not we actually go in for the full strike, because we don't actually... doesn't really change our clock all that much if we swing him with the aerialist, does it? Because we're going to probably put down the Tempest Djinn, who's going to be a big boy. He's going to be a, what, a 6 something ridiculous? I guess we could swing. Get him to 2. Play Tempest Djinn. It's not necessarily the correct play there to Djinn if he is going to wipe the board, but he's at 2 now, so any creature is likely to just kill him here. We've got a decent blocker which stops him from getting in. A Binding is just not gonna do it. So we go to 5, he goes to 10. We swing in. And he's dead. And that's basically how most games go. Lifelink would have been quite annoying for us there, but we actually had the Dreamcaller to make sure that he didn't get additional life in. If we'd have actually managed to swing in with that Pouncer, he wouldn't have been dead there, which is interesting. But yeah, let's go for another game. Alright, so... this hand is just not good enough at all. We don't have any early game creatures, and that is exactly the plan that we're trying to follow here. So we're just going to mulligan that one. And this one's much better. We've got a Corsair on 2. Do I want that land? I don't need it yet. I think I'm going to bottom it. We've got a Corsair on 2. We could Curious Obsession it if we wanted to on 3. Dread Wanderer, so it's the zombie race. And I'm glad I bottomed that land, because we would have slightly flooded out. So let's get our 2-1 down. Next turn we can Curious Obsession to pump it a little bit for 3. And then play the Aerialist with a Raid trigger. He has the Fatal Push. That is annoying. Okay. Should keep aware that the Curious Obsession actually does have this clause at the end that says that if you didn't attack with a creature, you have to sacrifice it. So don't ever play a creature and then slap an Obsession on it, because it will immediately sacrifice itself. Just something to be aware of. We're not actually in a good position anymore, though, because our opponent did remove the creature that we were kind of relying on to make this area list a little bit bigger, and also it was going to be the... Wow, okay. It was going to be the person to hold on to our obsession. I think our opponent is just getting away with the game here. Yeah, favourable wins is just not going to do it. And this is also another reason why it's just a pretty good grind deck. It's because this game's already over. And we can just scoop out on turn 3, get into another game and start earning our gold. So I think, yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Alright, let's go to another game. Okay, with this hand... this one's... It's a little awkward, honestly, because we have one Corsair. We are on the draw, which is never ideal. We always want to be on the play if we can help it. But being on the draw, that means that there's an additional card that we don't know about. So, what are the odds that that additional card is going to be good? Like a 1-drop would be nice. More creatures would be nice. Honestly, a 3rd land is just going to be good. So I think there's plenty of cards that we could draw off the top that could make this hand perfectly acceptable, so we're going to take it. It's not like God tier, but it's acceptable. And we get a Lookout's Dispersal. I think that's probably one of the cards that we weren't too happy about. So we're off to a slow start, but hopefully our opponent's doing the same. Glint Sleeve Siphoner. Now I could unsummon that. And I think I will. Slows our opponent down. Kind of reverses who went first in this game. Because now I get my creature down first. And I get the first hit in. Unless he's got removal here. But if he's got removal, there's a possibility that his Siphoner's not going to actually be able to be played here. Plus our Tempest Djinn is then safe to come down as well. So he's got an extra planes. So yeah, if he's got black removal, he can't play his Siphoner and do that at the same turn. It's just little increments of value there. Now, the question is, what do we do with this hand? We definitely swing in, because we're all about making sure that we get our beats in. It's just whether or not I want to chart a course, or if I want to get in an extra point of damage, or even just play the Tempest Djinn, which is a 3/4 at the current stage. The only thing is, you could go land Binding or land Cast Out or something like that, and I can't protect it with the Dispersal. So I think I'm going to swing in for 2, and I'm just going to improve my hand a little bit. And we actually get the Storm Tamer, which is absolutely beautiful. That's adding cards to our hand and adding creatures to the board so that we can rush our opponent. He's dealing 2 to us, we're dealing 3 as it currently stands. Could be 5 with the favourable winds. If I get a land, I might go winds and then hold open Dispersal. Otherwise it might actually be Storm Tamer Dispersal. Hidden Stockpile. Okay. Opponent currently has nothing to sacrifice to trigger Revolt, but something to be aware of. Looks to be staring at our Storm Tamer, so I guess he's got a Fatal Push. If you're running a deck with Revolt in it, then yeah, Fatal Push is definitely an auto-include. So he gets in for 2. Puts us to 18. I'd love if he sacked to his Hidden Stockpile there, but he didn't. Okay. So we missed our land drop, which is less than ideal. So I think what we want to do is we want to swing for 2. We want to play the Storm Tamer. And cost reduction is actually going to allow Lookout's Dispersal to be able to counter something here. And we should be able to counter something, unless he plays like a 1-mana card. We're all good. Ooh, he's Esper. That's interesting. Murders the Storm Tamer. Yeah, I don't care about that. That's a 3-mana spell to kill a 1-mana 1/1. I take that every day. A land drop would be perfect. Oh, God. Now we're in a bit of a grim situation because we've not hit our land drop. We're still swinging with the Corsair, it's just whether or not we go Favourable Winds or Aerialist, or even simply just hold open our Dispersal. I'm tempted to just hold open the counter here. Since this board presence is even, but we are actually winning the race, I'm tempted to just hold open the counter. If he's got an Essence Scatter, playing the Aerialist is a mistake. Because then that allows him to play whatever he wants next turn. Yeah, I think I'm going to pass. I need that land drop. The land drop allows me to add to the board and hold open my counters. And I think if I play a creature here, I add an extra clock to the board, which is fair enough, but I also allow my opponent to do the same by tapping out. Goes with another Siphoner, and you can pay for this one. Okay. Now we're in a little bit of trouble, but I imagine he has a follow-up play here. That murder cannot stand. There's nothing our opponent could possibly have for that 1 mana there. Dispel is not in this format at the moment. Okay, so my opponent's getting in for 4 now, so he is going to be able to reverse this race. Oh, beautiful. Okay, so we could get in for 3, or we could actually add extra power to the board with Aerialist, and I think that's what I'm going to choose to do. So we're going to get in for 2, take him to 10. And then we're going to play Aerialist, which has a raid trigger, so it's actually a 2/3. That's 4 power on the board. We've reversed what he's done here. And we get to hold open our Lookout's Dispersal. He's choosing to draw a card to take some damage. That's both good and bad for us. Card advantage is obviously not ideal. We are getting out of range as well, where Lookout's Dispersal is actually useful, so we really, at this point, we want to be seeing our opponent playing like his endgame cards that he can't possibly pay for. So, gets in for 4. She's going to take us to 10. There's nothing we can do about that. Glint Sleeve Siphoner does have Menace, so we'd need an extra blocker back in order to deal with that. And that is beautiful. That is beautiful. So we could swing for 4 and play Tempest Djinn with Dispersal open. Or we could play Favourable Winds and swing for 6. Swinging for 6 doesn't really change too much. But a Tempest Djinn does. Neither of them really change too much, so I suppose Tempest Djinn is kind of the threat that needs to be answered immediately. Let's see if my opponent has more removal here. It's like if I get this damage in, now Tempest Djinn is a lethal threat on his own. We have counter backup. So we'll see what our opponent has here. Nothing on our turn. Okay. Our opponent's drawing a card down to 4. That's probably a desperation draw right there, because he's just allowed the Corsair and Aerialist to be lethal. And he scoops it up. So that was actually one of the more interactive games right there. It's probably the most fun ones. This deck can be a little bit of a goldfish deck. That term just basically means that you play the deck by yourself. It's like a lot of combo decks are kind of puzzly in that sense, so that's what goldfishing usually comes down to. Its most combo decks are goldfish decks. But I really hope I showcase this deck to you guys. I think I've given a fair few good interactions as far as showcasing the deck's concerned. I don't think I've left too much out, but yeah, I do really recommend this deck as both a beginner deck and also as a grinding deck as well. It only takes 7 rares to make it happen. Honestly, these aren't necessary. You can swap them out with some lesser powered stuff, although you will be hurting the competitive edge of the deck. You know, Dreamcaller Sirens really are useful for locking down opponents. You could swap one of these out for an unsummoned perhaps, and any Tempest Djinns that you don't have, you could search through your blue list. You can also go blue colorless. Just type in flying and it'll give you all of the creatures, or you can actually even restrict it specifically to creatures there. And you could go through the list and find some flyers. What I would suggest if you are going to pick a flyer is look for ones that are good, really good value. So the only situations in this deck where the flyers aren't like terribly good value is like Kaisail Corsair. You know, it's just a 2/1 for 2, but even that's, you know, acceptable flying value that just has upside with favorable wins. So you could swap these out if you don't even have the commons and uncommons for these flyers. You could use Artificer's Assistants, which are kind of good. They don't really have too much upside as far as actual board presence, you know, because we won't be actually casting any historic spells. You could also use Skystrip Plunderers as well. They do have a little bit of synergy in the deck with Stormfleet Aerialist. They actually do add counters to creatures, so the counter that you get on the raid from the Aerialist can be added with the Plunderer, so there is that there as well. Just going through the list though, you can tell which is good value and which is not. You know, you don't want to be using things like Kefnet because we want to be emptying our hands, so no need for mythics in this particular case. You know, Aven Wind Mage is a 3-mana 2/2 flyer, which is underpowered in our particular deck. It only gets back to the power that you'd really want if you have an instant or sorcery spell cast, and our only instants and sorceries are reactive or post-combat based. So yeah, just look through the list. If you don't have any of the cards, they are replaceable. Some are a little less replaceable than others, but I'll leave that to your judgment as far as adding cards in. Just remember, if you're going to add in special lands as well, that you are cutting the power of Tempest Djinn just a wee bit. So, you know, the blue deserts, they're just not particularly worth it. Deserts of the Mindful, I think they're called. They're not particularly worth it in order to have that cycle, you know, to stop yourself from being mana screwed. They just cut power off of the Tempest Djinn, so that's basically something to be keeping in mind. Anyway guys, thank you very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed this particular deck. As I said, I'm going to try and do a budget deck every single day. This one slightly broke the rules on day 1, but I promise that the future ones are not going to be doing that, and future ones might be a little bit more ultra budget as well. And by ultra budget, I basically mean it practically uses no rares or mythics. It's kind of similar to the Famished Paladin combo list. If you haven't checked out that list and you want an ultra budget combo list, then that is definitely one to check out as well. I don't believe it uses any rares in it whatsoever, or mythics, so it's definitely a fun budget alternative, and I think it does need a little bit of an update actually as well. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Like and subscribe if you did enjoy this series and you want to see more budget decks in the future. It helps out a great deal. Be sure to share this video around as well if you know somebody who is looking to get into Magic Arena. This is a great place to start it off, and I'll be doing plenty more budget videos as well. If it's not quite what you had in mind, I'm sure I've got something for everyone. Thank you very much, guys, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.